integrity, loyalty, patience, authenticity, humility, humor, strength, wisdom, love. It is rare to find all of these qualities present in a single character in any story. It is rarer still to find them in a character who struggles, who suffers loss, who has to grow and change. Rarest of all might be finding such a character in a cartoon, a show targeted at and written for children, yet still beloved by viewers of all ages for its heart, its incredible character arcs, and its meaningful storytelling. Uncle Iroh is an incredible example of masculinity because he exemplifies these essential virtues. To live out these virtues is to embrace full, authentic masculinity. Masculinity is not merely defined by being strong, confident, and assertive, but rather is well-rounded and balanced, understanding that there is far more to manhood than power and bravado. I should mention that masculinity is not the opposite of femininity, but rather it's the opposite of boyish immaturity. These traits and virtues that I've listed are not unique to masculinity. Women living out these traits display authentic femininity. That's not to say masculinity and femininity are the same. Two instruments playing the same note will sound quite different, but I'm a man with a man's point of view, and Iroh is also a man, so masculinity is what I'm marginally well qualified to discuss. If this video does well, maybe I'll get my wife to write a counterpart video for Toph or Eowyn or Galadriel. This Galadriel. Anyhow, now that we've got that clarification out of the way, let's examine how Iroh lives out his masculinity and what he can teach us about what it means to be a man. Having integrity, holding onto upright moral principles, is undoubtedly a necessary quality for any man. When faced with difficult decisions, do we stand fast and act according to our conscience, or do we fold under pressure?
Like a jelly-boned wimp!
The show takes its time developing Iroh, slowly letting us learn more about him. At first, in addition to being his nephew's teacher, Iroh is presented as comic relief, a lighthearted counterpart to the overly serious and intense Zuko. Over time, Iroh's journey, his past is revealed, and we learn how his mistakes, failures, and loss shaped him to be the man he is now. A man of principle, a man who believes in the dignity of all peoples. However, he doesn't start out as that man. Even after all he has been through, Iroh is not yet fully developed. During the Siege of the North, Iroh, still the loyal Fire Nation general, advises Zhao on the best strategy to win the battle and conquer the Northern Water Tribe.
I must advise you to halt your attack. The waterbenders draw their power from the moon.
It is not until Zhao reveals his plan to murder the Moon Spirit that we get a glimpse of Iroh's higher principles.
Zhao, the spirits are not to be trifled with.
Iroh may be loyal to the Fire Nation, but he's also dedicated to the good and balance of the whole world. Forced to choose between the two, Iroh chooses the greater good, marking himself a traitor and commencing the final stage of his interior journey. Iroh's time in the Earth Kingdom during Book 2 evolves and solidifies his principles. By living among his former enemies, he develops a newly strengthened desire for equality and fair treatment. This comes to a head in the Crossroads of Destiny, where Iroh confronts Zuko as he moves to attack Aang, moves toward the honor and position he still desires.
It's time for you to choose. It's time for you to choose good.
Iroh, at the end of Book 1, though he stood fast on other principles, likely would not have made this speech. But he has learned and grown beyond who he was then, and so he passionately pleads with Zuko, who joined Iroh on this journey throughout the Earth Kingdom, to adhere to the same ideals that Iroh now holds dear. Having integrity does not mean being completely rigid and inflexible. Integrity is not stubbornly clinging to ideas or values with no room for change. Rather, it is the ability, after having formed our principles, to not waver when they are challenged. Iroh may not always have been fully on the side of goodness and truth, but he undoubtedly always held fast to his beliefs and standards, regardless of the consequences. We do not merely have responsibilities to principles, but we are also accountable to the people in our lives, our loved ones, especially our children. Iroh serves as Zuko's mentor and guide, and cares for Zuko when no one else does.
I think of you as my own.
He is not blind to Zuko's faults and shortcomings. Indeed, he may understand them better than anyone else. This is illustrated beautifully in The Storm, where Iroh describes the circumstances of Zuko's banishment to the ship's disgruntled crew. Where others are quick to dismiss Zuko as impulsive and reckless, which he most certainly is, Iroh knows Zuko's heart. He understands that Zuko is in need of growth and change, but also that he has suffered greatly and needs to be given time and space to become the man Iroh knows he can be.
Who are you? And what do you want?
Iroh is loyal to Zuko. He is true to him. That doesn't mean he supports every reckless action or rash word of the prince, but rather that he refuses to give up on his nephew. Loyalty is not blind obedience or acceptance. It is the adherence to one's duty to another. Even when Iroh and Zuko are torn apart by Zuko's betrayal, his uncle remains loyal. He continues to hope that Zuko can find his way again. Iroh does not abandon Zuko, does not count him as completely lost, but rather takes up his fight in the only way he now can. The time they spent in the Earth Kingdom living amongst, working for, laughing and eating with the enemies of their nation was transformational for Iroh. As already mentioned, it allowed him to grow beyond his roots in the Fire Nation. But Zuko's metamorphosis was not complete, and it was reverted by the promise of having his former life restored.
You can still redeem yourself.
The kind of redemption she offers is not for you.
This convinces Iroh that there is nothing more he can do for Zuko. Not directly, anyway. After having received all the wisdom and guidance his uncle had to offer, Zuko must now find his own way, and it is Iroh's job to simply be there when Zuko comes back, and to welcome him with open arms. But more on that later. Iroh's steadfast refusal to give up on Zuko shows us that loyalty is not a flighty thing to be given or taken away lightly. It is a conscious choice to stand by another, to support them and help them, because they need and deserve someone at their side. I can't think of a relationship that better exemplifies patience than that of Iroh's with Zuko. Patience is an essential part of Iroh's loyalty to Zuko. Despite his nephew's regular outbursts, flare-ups, and explosions of temper, Iroh constantly remained a calming presence for the hot-headed prince. Having the patience to serenely deal with his decidedly impatient nephew is one of Iroh's defining qualities. King Bumi's advice,
"You need to find someone who waits and listens before striking,"
applies beyond the limited scope of earthbending. As Iroh explains to Zuko in Bitter Work, each nation, each cadre of benders, can learn from the other elements and the other nations. The patience and steadiness of the Earth Kingdom's people is a quality that everyone should admire and strive to obtain. The ability to wait, to slow down, to calmly take your time and consider your options before acting is necessary for true, well-rounded masculinity. Charging at your problems head on,
And when I say head on, I mean like this.
may in fact be the solution, but only if all other possibilities have been considered and found less effective. It should never be done as an immediate gut instinct reaction. That sort of impulsiveness is a clear sign of immaturity. Consider Iroh's storyline during the Spirit World. When confronted by earthbenders, caught unawares and badly outnumbered, he does not immediately lash out and resist, as we can imagine Zuko would. Iroh endures captivity until he sees an opening, then acts decisively and ferociously. His patience and compliance put the earthbenders at ease, and Iroh is able to exploit their lack of caution and engineer an escape. Or take Iroh's initial meeting with Toph during the chase. Upon sensing his movement, Toph immediately attacks, showing her fear and unease at being on her own, her immaturity and lack of experience. Iroh wisely does not respond in kind, but instead simply responds,
That really hurt my tailbone.
where so many, especially firebenders, might instinctually fight back, believing themselves to be in danger. Iroh takes time to read the situation and act in a disarming manner. He absolutely could have fought back with some justification, and that would have been a tool for the ages, but instead he lets events play out and soon learns that his attacker was no enemy, but rather a scared child in need of wise advice and a good cup of tea. Patience does not mean a lack of decisiveness, but rather an ability to judiciously decide when and how to act. To truly be a man, you have to be true to yourself, to who you really are. Men are not soulless robots capable of powering through any situation without changing so much as a facial expression or experiencing a single emotion, nor should they aspire to such stoic heights. Men should not only enjoy things deemed manly by whatever society they happen to live in, they should be able to enjoy a wide variety of things, from flowers to art to tea, and they should be able to appreciate the beauty, skill, or deliciousness inherent in all of those. Iroh is so beautifully, wonderfully authentic. There's no better example of his authenticity, of course, than his love of tea.
After I reconquer Ba Sing Se, I'm going to reconquer my tea shop.
I'm not suggesting that tea is widely seen as unmanly. It's quite common worldwide, and this also seems to apply to the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I'm an American, and we tend to have skewed perspectives about all things we perceive as British. Anyhow, I think we can agree that a deep love of, maybe even an obsession with, a beverage that can best be described as
Hot leaf juice.
is not something we would expect from a fire-breathing general of the nation that is taking over the known world. But that certainly doesn't stop Iroh from enjoying it to the fullest. Iroh's love of tea provides us with an example of the beauty of appreciation. There are so many good and beautiful things in this world and Iroh's that deserve to be appreciated. Being able to look at a flower or a cup of tea as more than their surface qualities and appreciate the intricate design or creative blend of flavors is a quality for which we should all strive. If we go through life only judging things based off a surface level view, we are not seeing their true natures, and thus our thoughts and opinions cannot truly be authentic. Like the flower and the tea, Iroh is far more than can be perceived at first glance, or sip. By taking the time to really think about the world around him, seeing the beauties that hide from a casual glance, Iroh tells us about his own nature, how he is so much more than meets the eye. Iroh's love of tea also shows us the importance of mastery. When we truly appreciate something, we should strive to master it as best we can. Whether an art form, a job, or any other means of self-expression, diligent study and practice cuts through cheap tricks and quick wins, and allows us to display something true and authentic about ourselves. By mastering the art of tea making, Iroh does not merely establish that he really likes tea, but also that he is a careful, patient, deliberate man who has spent years perfecting his craft. A man who can take the time to become a master, even in the making of
Hot leaf juice!
shows he is not afraid to pursue his true passions and demonstrates a willingness to learn that is translatable to any area of study. By daring to be the Fire Nation general with a passion for tea, Iroh teaches us the importance of defying molds, of rejecting the expectations of others when they run contrary to our true selves, no matter how others might view us. Humility is one of my favorite virtues to discuss, mostly because it's largely misunderstood.
Pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.
Being humble does not mean having a lowly view of oneself or disregarding one's positive traits. Having true humility means having an accurate view of yourself, having insight into your own strengths and weaknesses, your virtues and vices. To be humble, we have to reject bravado, overconfidence, and arrogance, yes, but at the same time, we must acknowledge our own abilities. In short, humility can be defined as having clear self-perception, having an untarnished view of yourself. We see Iroh's humility on full display during The Tale of Iroh. This short anthological segment of The Tales of Ba Sing Se gives us wonderful insight into Iroh's character. Though he's a man of great botanical knowledge, he doesn't shame the shop owner for not knowing where to place the moonflower.
The moonflower likes partial shade.
Iroh imparts his knowledge in a genteel way, lacking any pride or derision. His humility allows him to share what he knows in a generous manner, with genuine care and love for the world around him. Or consider how Iroh handles the would-be mugger with the poor stance. If he were driven by pride, Iroh would notice the man's ineptitude and immediately act, only desiring to demonstrate his superior martial proficiency. Instead, Iroh takes the time to calmly and even sadly note the mugger's ludicrous stance. He does not deride the man, he does not mock him, he simply critiques his technique, or lack thereof, in a manner that shows how much Iroh cares about proper form and training. Teaching someone of lesser knowledge without belittling them takes humility, as Iroh displays here. I wasn't completely sure under which category to talk about Iroh's birthday picnic for Lu 10, but since I've been covering the tale of Iroh under humility, now seems like an appropriate time. One of the hardest things to do in life is to admit that we made mistakes. Our pride tends to make us hate admitting that we were in the wrong. We will go to great lengths to justify things we have said or done. When Iroh says,
If only I could have helped you,
we understand that he has no such pride. He failed his son, and he lost him. There's nothing he can do about it, but he can grow as a man and as a father. Iroh's pride could have overtaken him, caused him to seek vengeance for his son by throwing all his energy, his whole self, into the war effort, but he chose another way. By learning from his failure, Iroh became a wiser, gentler man, while still retaining his inner strength. Humility allows us to overcome our pride and learn from our failures, rather than being consumed by them. It's a little odd to talk about humor being an essential part of masculinity, since stoicism is widely considered a manly trait. And to be sure, the ability to maintain composure in difficult situations is worth obtaining, But if you can't also take the time to laugh, particularly at yourself, you lack balance. Masculinity can never sway too far toward one virtue without becoming unbalanced and venturing into the extreme end of that virtue, and thus becoming a vice. This is applicable for any of the virtues discussed here, but I think it's notable with humor because stoicism is so common in the archetypal man's man in cinema. Ethan Hunt, Jason Bourne, John Wick, and any number of John Wayne or Clint Eastwood's characters are able to endure the toughest of situations without so much as changing their facial expression. However, even they have moments of sorrow and joy, but none quite so well portrayed as our Iroh's. What makes Iroh's humor so delightful? Well, consider a few more examples.
Only in my case, it is more like a vast ocean.
You bought a sungi horn?
For music night on the ship. Now, if we only had some woodwinds. Not that I love you. I just met you.
For one thing, Iroh's humor is never at another's expense.
He means no offense. I'm certain you bathe regularly.
He never belittles or tears down another person for a laugh. The vast majority of his humor is self-deprecating, or just straight up funny at no one's expense. Iroh is more than willing to laugh at himself or find joy in an amusing situation or turn of phrase. Able to laugh at clever remarks, goofy objects, or bad tea jokes, Iroh shows us the simple beauty of good humor. Smiling and laughing are some of the most attractive human behaviors. Happy people, quite simply, are more likable and approachable. Where Zuko remains stoic and steadfastly devoted to his single-minded mission, Iroh attracts the goodwill and love of the audience with his light-heartedness and jovial nature. But Iroh's good humor is not merely for our benefit to make the audience love him, though it certainly accomplishes that. So much of it is for Zuko's benefit. Iroh tries regularly to lighten his nephew's dour mood. Rather than being aimlessly cheery, there is an end to Iroh's jokes and goofs. They are for the good of his nephew, for the good of the boy who he would not see follow the path of his own son. Iroh's humor is so wonderfully masculine because he deploys it appropriately and purposefully. He knows when to be stoic and serious, and when to wisecrack and smile disarmingly. There is balance in his humor, and balance, finding the golden mean, as we've already discussed, is crucial for the pursuit of true, full manhood. Now let's talk about how Iroh fulfills every man's dream of becoming an absolute physical specimen. Being physically strong is important, let's be clear about that. Strengthening your body through rigorous exercise and training allows you to take care of and, if needed, defend yourself and your family. There is great value in physical strength. However, such strength is impossible to achieve without mental strength, without fortitude and willpower. It's great to work out, to develop, to train and tone your body, but you cannot do so consistently unless you have an end in mind. Throughout the first two books, Iroh is far, far from the paragon of physical fitness. He himself cracks jokes about his love for food and the size of his belly. But when the need arises, Iroh reveals the strength that he has always held within himself. That strength is not in his biceps, well, not at first, but rather is in his mind, in his perseverance. Upon getting thrown in jail, Iroh does not despair, though he does take time to recover from Zuko's betrayal. When we see Zuko visit his uncle in the headband, Iroh is too hurt to respond. He is not yet ready to help Zuko find his way again. But Zuko's visit does confirm one thing, that the prince is still in need of guidance and love.
Please, Uncle, I'm so confused. I need your help.
This one-sided conversation helps restore Iroh's purpose, and his hope for Zuko impels him to become, well, an absolute unit. Strength like Iroh's is not impressive simply in its own right, though it is incredibly impressive. I mean, he blows open the wall of Ba Sing Se with a single massive fireball, for crying out loud, but rather because of what it tells us about the journey of the character possessing such strength. It shows dedication, perseverance, and self-sacrifice. One cannot obtain strength of body, mind, or firebending without bending one's will toward mastery. Iroh is a perfect embodiment of those strengths. His resolute, unfailing pursuit of what is good and true allowed him to become a man who could tear through metal bars with his bare hands, unleash waves of fire that overwhelm his opponents, and, most importantly, love Zuko in a way that allows him to see clearly and find his own path.
The struggle between your two great-grandfathers can help you better understand the battle within yourself.
Iroh's chiseled physique is not masculine just because it looks awesome, though it does, but rather because it shows us what we can be if the need arises, and if our minds are sufficiently strong. Physical power without purpose is vanity, but when given direction, when needed, it unmistakably displays the masculinity, the dedication, fortitude, and perseverance of its holder. All of these virtues, however, are for naught if one does not have wisdom. What is wisdom? It is not merely knowledge, no matter how high the level of knowledge. Instead, it is the combination of knowledge, insight, and right judgment that allows one to act appropriately in a given situation. Wisdom is knowing when to be stoic and when to crack a joke. Wisdom is knowing when it's time to be patient and when it's time to strike. Wisdom is understanding the power of physical strength and of a gentle word, and using one when the other wouldn't be as effective. Wisdom is a deep and accurate understanding of oneself, of others, and of the world, combined with the ability to discern how to act based off that knowledge. If you polled fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender to define Iroh with a single trait, I'd bet good money that wisdom would be at the top of the list. Iroh displays wisdom in practically every scene he's in. By imparting kindly words of advice to Toph, by teaching Zuko the importance of balance, and by admitting to Aang that he doesn't always have the answers, Iroh demonstrates that he is an astute, experienced teacher who is also smart enough to admit that he is not omniscient. It's hard to pick out examples of Iroh's wisdom that I haven't already covered under another virtue, and that's kind of the point. By exercising patience when captured, Iroh demonstrates wisdom. By knowing when to step in and prevent Zuko from doing something rash, Iroh shows proper judgment. By humbly accepting that Ozai, the man who stole the throne of the Fire Nation from him, is not his to defeat, Iroh displays superior understanding. Iroh is so admirable, is such a